Hello class, and welcome to lesson 5.3, trinomial factoring. This is probably the most important factoring lesson I'm going to teach you, and we need to develop a firm basis today on trinomial factoring because it's going to get a little harder tomorrow. But before we get to doing trinomial factoring, let's do some warm-ups. So the first one says to expand the following. Remember, expand means to multiply. Okay, so what we need to do is remember to use distributive law or FOIL or squaring binomials. So take a look. We're going to multiply through, so it should be 9w cubed minus 10w and plus 12w squared. Remember, we want to put them in highest degree order, so it's going to be 6w cubed plus 12w squared minus 10w. So the degree of polynomial here would be 3. So degree equals 3. It's the highest exponent. Okay, taking a look at the next one, folks. It's multiplying binomials. You're going to use FOIL first, outside, inside, last. So it's going to be p squared minus 7p plus 5p minus 35. Collect like terms. It's going to be p squared minus 2p minus 35. Now C is a little bit of a tricky one, so I'm going to leave the 4 out front, and then I'm going to square the binomial. I'm going to use the short form, so I square the first. C times C is C squared. I'm going to double the product, so 2 times C times -9. Don't write down the 4 because that's staying out front, okay? So when you multiply that through together, that's going to be minus 18C, or expand it and collect like terms if you need to do that, plus square the last, 81. Okay, then you use distributive law to bring the 4 in, so you're going to have 4c squared minus 72c plus 324. Okay, I didn't do that with my mathematics. I had to use a calculator, okay? Didn't use that mentally. All right, next one is factoring. When we factor, we're doing the opposite of expanding. So instead of multiplying, we are going to divide here. Okay, so the first example, ladies and gentlemen, although it might look like a difference because of two terms, however, these are not perfect squares. How can I tell immediately? Because my exponents have odds in them, and 24 isn't a perfect square. So I know I'm not doing difference of squares, so I know I'm going to I apologize, folks. Can we just back that truck up? We haven't learned difference of squares yet. That's one of the methods we're going to learn. So right now we're just going to practice the factoring that we've learned before, which is called common factoring. Okay, so I apologize. Back that truck up. You'll understand what that means in a little bit longer when we've done that lesson. So what we're taking a look at here, folks, when we're dividing here, we're looking for the biggest number that goes into all the terms. So let's look at the numerical value first. So we're looking at what goes into 24 and 16. It's 8. And then we look for all the common variables. So D is common. E, take a look at the lowest power, is squared, and F. So we're going to factor by dividing each term by the greatest common factor, which is out front here, and we're going to be left with 3DE minus 2. So notice the DE squared F cancels. All right. Next one, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this one. What do we notice here? Every sign is negative, so take out a negative factor. The biggest number that goes into all the numbers is 15. And we have to take a look. We've got P's, and the lowest one is P. We've got Q, and the lowest one of Q is Q squared. And R is the lowest one we can take. So divide through, ladies and gentlemen. Watch that your signs change. You're going to be left with 2PR plus Q squared plus 6p to the 4th, q to the 3rd, and r to the 4th. Again, if you need help with that stuff, come see me in class. The next type of factoring is where we have a common binomial. So notice the common binomial is s plus 5, so you got to put it out front, and because it's a binomial, it needs to be in brackets. And then you put your leftovers, which is 2s minus what's really out there, minus 1. Okay, again, taking a look at our second one, our greatest common factor is e minus 7. It's a binomial, and you take your leftovers, negative 4d plus 7f. Okay, next we are going to take a look at trinomial factoring. Now, trinomial factoring, folks, is based on the expression ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? And ladies and gentlemen, the a equals 1. So if a equals 1, then it's going to be x squared plus bx plus c. All right. So what we're going to do is back up a little bit from what we've done in our previous lessons. Recall, to multiply two binomials, remember we used FOIL, first, outside, inside, last, to expand. So let's just do that. So first is going to be d squared, outside negative 4d, inside plus 5d, and last is going to be minus 20. Collecting like terms to finish off, we have d squared plus d, or 1d. That's a bad looking d, sorry, let me fix that up, folks. So let's fix this up. Plus d minus 20. So ladies and gentlemen, we're working backwards. We're going to start with a trinomial, and we're going to end up with two binomials. Okay? So notice that we usually end up with a trinomial solution. Okay? We will now do the opposite of expanding, which is factoring. Okay? So, to factor an expression in the form x squared plus bx plus c, remember in this case a equals 1. Next day's lesson won't be so easy. A will not equal 1, so we'll have to do something a little harder than today. Okay? We must find two numbers where the product is c, which is your last the constant term all by itself, and the sum is b. So what's in front of just the coefficient of x? Okay, so that's how we're going to set things up. So here's your steps, folks. 1, identify the product and sum using what b and c values are. Write down all possible factors of c. Use those same factors to find the one grouping that sums to b. And then we're going to write down the solution as two binomials. And then to check, you use FOIL to expand and collect like terms. Okay, for the first one, ladies and gentlemen, until you get the hang of it, let's just quickly go over what A equals B equals C equals. So A equals 1, good. B equals 3, and C equals 2. Where am I getting that from? The form ax squared plus bx plus c. We just know that A equals 1. All right, then what we're going to do, folks, is on the side margin, we're going to do the product, which stands for P. So product equals your C term. So the product is 2. Okay. And we're also going to do the sum, which equals the number in front of X, which is 3. So we write down on the margin, product of 2, sum of 3. We want to figure out what are all of our possible factors to multiply to 2. And of course, it's 1 times 2. Then what we need to do is say, hey, we got a product that equals 2, but does the sum, if you take these two numbers and add them up, does it equal 3? 1 plus 2 equals 3. So we have, that is our case. In other cases, we'll have more than one answer, or one of the more option, and I'll show you what that means. So here's how you set up your two binomial products. You take the square root of the first, so square root of x squared is x, and then you take the sign attached here, so it's going to be plus 1 and plus 2. That will change later on when we get into some harder ones. Okay, let's start off easy and we'll get harder as we go. We're going to try another one here. B, m squared plus 5m plus c. So off to the margin, product equals your c, which is 6, and sum equals your b term, which is 5. Okay, hopefully you can recognize where those are in standard form. Now we're going to figure out what are all of our products of 6. 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. So always list your products down. And then what you're going to do is all of these have a product that's 6, but only one of them will sum to 5. So for example, 1 plus 6, that's 7. That won't work. But 2 plus 3 is 5. So you circle that one. That's the one that fits both cases. Okay? So what you do is go over here, set up two brackets. Square root of the first, which is m, and take the sign with it. So plus 2 and plus 3. All right. It says to check A and B. So to check, ladies and gentlemen, you do your answer first, which is x plus 1 times x plus 2. And then you're going to expand, so FOIL it out. So x squared plus 2x plus x, or 1x, plus 2, and collect like terms. Okay? Awesome. Let's do this next one. So check, write your answer down. I apologize, not x, it's m. So m plus 2 and m plus 3, and we're going to FOIL that out. So that's going to be m squared plus 3m plus 2m plus 6, and collect like terms, m squared plus 5m plus 6, and make sure, again, do these match your questions? Yes. All right, let's try another one. Getting a little harder numbers here, so there's going to be more chance for error here. So let's take a look. Product, in this case for C, is 24, and sum equals 11. Write down all of our products of 24. 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. Okay, so all of those are products of 24, and only one of them will be our sum of 11. So sum of 11 is 3 and 8. So again, square root of the first, and the sign, which is plus 3 and plus 8. Now you're going to say, Miss R, this is pretty easy stuff. I get it now. However, I'm going to make it harder. So stay with me for this one, because this one's a little different. Okay, so take a look at D. Okay, product is 5, but be careful here. The sum is negative 6. So if my numbers have to add up to be negative, and the product is positive, what does that tell us about our signs? That means that you have to have a negative times a negative, that's my short form for negative, to become a positive. So both terms, or both factors, need to be negative. So when I'm doing my product of 5, instead of going 1 times 5, I'm going to go negative 1 times negative 5. All right? Awesome. Now that's the only factor that will fit the product of 5 when we know both have to be negative. And does it sum to negative 6? Absolutely. So again, step 2 brackets, take the square root of the first. You got to be careful here. You take the sign attached to it. So now it's going to be b minus 1 and b minus 5. Awesome. Let's try this next one, and then I'll take a little break, take a little pause, and then we'll get back on it. Okay? So this next one, E, product equals 16, and the sum equals negative 8. If our sum is negative, that means at least one term has to be negative. But if our product is positive, that means it has to be a negative and a negative. So it's going to be 2 negatives to give you that result. All right. So when I do this, I'm going to go negative 1 times negative 16, negative 2 times negative 8, and negative 4 times negative 4. All of those match the product, but only one of those will match the sum of negative 8, which is this one. So again, set your square roots of the first term, then you take the sign, which is negative 4, and negative 4. Hold on, we're not done yet. What do I recognize about both those? They're the same. So I expect you to say f minus 4 squared. Okay, take a quick break. Oh, sorry. See if that still goes, live video, haha. I'm just going to take a pause and I'll be right back. All right, class, sorry I'm back from that pause. What I want to do is take a look at F now. F is a different example as well, okay? The product is negative 12. That's the first time we've seen a product that's negative. And the sum is positive 1, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, just be careful here. If the product is negative, that means you must have a negative and a positive. So 1 positive and 1 negative, because a positive times a negative gives you a negative result. So I'm going to write 2 separate lists down. I'm going to start by going the smallest one negative, so negative 1 times 12, negative 2 times 6, and negative 3 times 4, because that's one case. Or let's make the biggest one negative. 1 times negative 12, 2 times negative 6, and 3 times negative 4. All right, taking a look at all these options now, which one has a sum of positive 1? Here's a shortcut, guys. If the sum is positive, that means the biggest number has to be positive, so look in this column. And which one is it? It's actually the one at the bottom, okay? So square root the first term, so it's going to be x, and then you take the signs of these, so it's going to be minus 3 and plus 4. Just a side note, folks, doesn't really matter which one you do first. You could say x plus 4 times x minus 3. They are the same thing. However, you got to make sure you've got the correct sign attached to the correct number. All right? Okay? Otherwise, you'd be choosing this option, which would be incorrect. It would not multiply to the same values. All right. Let's take a look at G. Oh, we're almost done here, guys. So taking a look at the last one here, we have a product that equals negative 40 and a sum that equals negative 3. So again, when the product is negative, that means we have to have one negative and one positive. Okay, so I'm going to go negative 1 times 40, negative 2 times 20, negative 4 times 10, and negative 5 times 8. Now I'm going to make the biggest numbers negative. So 1 times negative 40, 2 times negative 20, 4 times negative 10, and 5 times negative 8. Okay? Then, ladies and gentlemen, know those all have a product of negative 40, but which one has a sum of negative 3? So if the sum is negative, that means the biggest number has to be negative. And which one fits that case? It is that one. So again, take the square root of the first and take the signs of it, plus 5 and minus 8. Ladies and gentlemen, people always ask me this question, Miss R, do we need to show all these factors? And I will say initially yes, for two reasons. One, because I'm going to test you on this in unit test 5A. After 5A, no, you don't need to show me that expectation. So for 5B, you'll be fine to just write down the factor that matches. But for second reason, folks, is that say you write all the factors down but select the wrong one by accident, at least I can give you part marks because you had the right answer on your page that you just transferred incorrectly over. So always make sure you show your work, especially in test 5A. 5B is a different story. All right, looking at this one, folks, this one is a little tricky to start with. First of all, take a look at the order. This is not in standard form. So put it in standard form order before you assign A, B's, and C's, or your product and your sum. So now that we got it in order, folks, our product is 4 and our sum is negative 4. If our sum is negative, that means at least one needs to be negative, but our product is positive. That means both terms need to be negative. Okay, so negative 1 times negative 4 and negative 2 times negative 2. Which one has a sum of negative 4? Negative 2 times negative 2. So you take the square root of the first term and your signs of the second one. Hopefully you recognize that, hey, these are the same. So you're going to go s minus 2 squared. All right, ladies and gentlemen, normally I don't say this, but this is the time you need to do your homework. So make sure that you work really well in class or really well at home, depending on when you're doing your homework, and make sure that you actually spend time doing this. It's very important because we're going to add on to it next day, as well as next year we do a whole unit on quadratics, no matter if you take the 3M, the 3C, or the 3U. This does not disappear. You get a better understanding of it this year, and next year's will be easier. All right, as always, folks, give me talk to me if you need some extra help. You're using the homework for today is the factoring handout number 1, as well as textbook page 235, numbers 2, 7, and 8. Have a great day, folks.